Chapter 127 to 129. A deafening silence fell over the room, so profound that one could hear a pin drop. Hector stared at Shirou in disbelief, having never expected him to stand up to someone as powerful and imposing as Brastius. Even he would have been cautious and careful when faced with such a threat. Shirou's direct confrontation with Brastius greatly exceeded Hector's expectations, causing his nerves to involuntarily become alert. He was afraid that Brastius might take action right then and there. Not only Hector, even the calm and smiling Sir Ewain felt his heart racing with fear. They were both well aware of Brastius's volatile temperament, akin to that of a volcano, ready to erupt at any moment. If the successor of King Uther and the Minister of Military Affairs started fighting here, Camelot's fate would be sealed. The consequences of such a conflict would extend beyond Camelot. If a fight broke out, it could potentially weaken the defense lines of the northern kings, leaving them vulnerable to King Vortigern's invasion. The thought of such an outcome left Sir Ewain feeling frightened. Although Brastius had offered to come voluntarily to receive the successor, Sir Ewain had the right to refuse his request. However, in an attempt to assert their dominance, he had agreed to Brastius's proposal and allowed him to come along. But his plan had backfired, and the situation had become dangerous. Brastius peered down at Shirou with a cold gaze, his tall and burly figure exuding a violent aura akin to that of a fierce tiger. Shirou, however, held his head high, meeting Brastius's gaze calmly and without any signs of fear or aggression. His demeanor was like the vast sea, accommodating Brastius's tiger-like presence. Sensing the danger emanating from Brastius, Artoria furrowed her brow and took a step forward to protect Shirou. However, he raised his hand to stop her. Though she was confused as her king, she trusted his actions and obediently stood behind him. Brastius's gaze then shifted to Artoria and he sneered. "Woman." Artoria's eyebrows furrowed, and she clenched her slender hand clad in a white glove, but refrained from making any moves. Brastius shifted his gaze and directed it towards Shirou, questioning, "You're the second person to speak to me this way. Aren't you afraid that I might kill you? After all, you're not yet a king," Shirou responded calmly. "I am not afraid." "Why not?" Brastius questioned. "Because I am your king, the king of Camelot, the king of Britain," he declared confidently. "You're arrogant. I could kill you with just one step," Brastius retorted angrily. "You won't take that step because my sword will have already taken off your head," Shirou declared, unflinching. Brastius furrowed his brow and said, "My king is Uther Pendragon." "Uther is no longer with us," Shirou said. "Your king is Arthur now. Uther was a great warrior. He led armies into battle and won countless victories. What can you do? What do you have to offer?" Brastius questioned. Shirou stood tall and countered. While it is true that the former king won many battles, he was ultimately defeated by the white dragon Vortigern, but I will not meet the same fate. I will defeat him. "You ask me what I have to offer. Let me tell you," Shirou continued. "I charge fearlessly into the mountain of blades and do not back down in the sea of flames. I fight to the death in every battle. Is that not enough to prove myself?" Brastius regarded Shirou silently for a moment before finally asking, "Are you Arthur?" Shirou met his gaze and nodded firmly. "Yes," Brastius reminded him, "but you are not yet a king. I will be a king someday." "In that case, what transgression have I committed?" Brastius inquired. Shirou turned to the knights who surrounded them, all clearly on edge. "Disrespecting the king is a grave offense, punishable by death. Furthermore, attempting to force the king is also a capital offense. What do you believe should be done with him?" Brastius remained calm and composed, his expression unchanged as he replied, "So be it." The knights around Brastius grew nervous. "Therefore I grant you a pardon," Shirou declared. Brastius was stunned and asked, "Why?" "Because you have chosen your moment wisely," Shirou explained. "I may be filled with anger, but as I am not yet king, I cannot pass judgment on you as one. When I ascend to the throne, I shall not hold your actions against you." "That is all." Brastius gazed at Shirou intently for a moment, then took a deep breath. To the astonishment of the onlookers, he knelt down on one knee and recited the knight's oath of allegiance, saying with utmost respect, "You possess all the qualities of a great king. You will inherit the will of King Uther and become a truly remarkable ruler. I need not hear more. Return to your territory, Brastius." Shirou reassured him as he patted his shoulder. "The kingdom's defenses cannot be left without you." Brastius bowed respectfully and replied, "Yes, your excellency, Arthur." He then turned and led his troops away, his head held high. As Brastius prepared to depart, he paused to pat Sir Ewain's shoulder, eliciting a wry smile from the latter. Shirou noticed and turned to Sir Ewain, a smile on his face. "It appears that Sir Brastius has given you some tough advice to swallow." "Your excellency, Arthur." "You jest," Sir Ewain chuckled. "Sir Brastius simply instructed me to escort you safely to Camelot. The title has changed." Kay noticed this. Both Brastius and Ewain had previously referred to Shirou as the successor, but now they addressed him as Your Excellency. Arthur Kay's thoughts drifted to the matter at hand. Could it be that they now recognized Guinevere's claim to the throne? He wondered silently. "Is that so?" Shirou remarked with a smile. "It appears that Sir Brastius is a considerate and thoughtful person. Despite Shirou's assessment of Sir Brastias, both Sir Ector and Sir Owain, as well as Merlin, couldn't help but question his description in their hearts. A knight who had led a troop of 150 soldiers and dared to invade another kingdom and behead their king. Could he truly be considered a considerate and kind person? What a joke. However, Sir Owain regarded Shirou with a complex expression, his thoughts a jumble. He had believed that Shirou's confrontation with Brastias would lead to chaos, but he never expected that Brastias would be so thoroughly convinced by Shirou that he would become the first among the three pillars to acknowledge him. Arthur possesses all the necessary qualities of a true king. There's no need for further tests or trickery with Baldwin. You should acknowledge him. Remembering Brastias' words and looking at Shirou's serene smile, Sir Owain let out a deep sigh, his heart heavy with thought. The King of Camelot has truly returned. With a smile on his face, Sir Owain approached Shirou and greeted him warmly. This time, his words laced with sincerity. The two conversed amicably for some time, and eventually, the topic of Shirou's ascension to the throne in Camelot arose. Sir Owain explained to Shirou that the matter of succession was of great importance and required 3 months of preparation. He suggested that Shirou proceed to Camelot first and use that time to prepare himself. However, Shirou declined politely, offering instead to make the journey on foot while Sir Owain went ahead. Though initially taken aback by the proposal, Sir Owain ultimately relented, murmuring reluctantly, "You are truly a wise king." Before departing for Camelot, initially, Shirou had planned to return to his estate, but Ector suggested that he stay in the town hall instead. After giving it some thought, Shirou decided to take Ector's advice and stay at the town hall. A clamor of voices rose up outside the town hall as people shouted Shirou's name. Shirou stepped outside to address the crowd, offering them words of encouragement and sending them away with a renewed sense of hope in their hearts. The majority of those present were filled with eager anticipation, eagerly awaiting the future king who would ascend to Camelot in 3 months' time. They were captivated by the vivid and inspiring vision that Shirou had painted for them, and looked forward with hopeful hearts to what was to come. "You have indeed painted a grand vision," Merlin remarked. "But if you fail to achieve it, those who love you now may turn on you like ravenous beasts in the future." Shirou remained calm and composed, responding with a smile. "That is precisely why we must succeed." Merlin regarded him with surprise and asked, "Aren't you feeling overwhelmed by the pressure? Aren't you afraid of the challenges ahead?" "Of course I'm afraid. The future I have envisioned for myself can feel almost suffocating at times, but I must keep smiling, mustn't I?" Merlin regarded Shirou thoughtfully for a long moment before finally asking, "Are all individuals from 1500 years in the future as formidable as you?" Shirou seemed taken aback by the question, responding somewhat quizzically, "Am I really that formidable? I feel quite weak at times. Where I come from, people like me were quite commonplace." Merlin's expression became comically exaggerated as he responded, "Are you kidding me? Are all people from the future this terrifying?" He regarded Merlin with a hint of amusement. "Terrifying? Why do you say that? If you believe that I am powerful, then doesn't that mean that individuals throughout all of history are capable of greatness?" Shirou's gaze burned with an intense flame as he continued, "And that includes you, Merlin. You too are a person of remarkable strength." Merlin frowned slightly and replied, "But I am not human." Shirou responded with a gentle smile, "But you possess humanity, don't you? And that, my friend, is what truly matters." Merlin was speechless and could only stare blankly as Shirou left. At that moment, Artoria approached Shirou hesitantly, appearing as though she had something on her mind. Shirou sensed her hesitation and asked, "Is something troubling you? Do you have a question for me?" She hesitated for a moment before finally speaking up. "I wanted to ask you something. Earlier, when you confronted Sir Brastias, weren't you afraid that he would attack you?" Shirou responded calmly, "I am not afraid." Artoria seemed puzzled and asked, "Why is that?" He smiled and replied, "Fear is a manifestation of weakness towards strength. But in this case, I am not afraid because we are both weak." She appeared taken aback by Shirou's words and attempted to interject, "But your majesty, Sir Brastias is an incredibly powerful and respected knight. You may not understand the extent of his." Shirou shook his head, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Physical strength is one thing, but true strength lies within the soul," he explained. "What Sir Brastias genuinely longs for is a leader he can trust, someone who will accept him. His fear of the successor to the throne reveals his cowardice and lack of character. He is weak because he is afraid. It's as simple as that." Artoria appeared deep in thought, frowning slightly as she contemplated his words. After a moment, she retrieved a notebook from her pocket and began to write down what she had learned from their conversation. "Artoria," Shirou called out. "Ah, here." She quickly put away her notebook. Shirou threw Caliburn to her and said, "You will hold this sword from now on." She seemed taken aback by his words, shaking her head in disbelief. "What? How could I? This is the king's sword. As your loyal knight, how could I possibly lay a hand on it?" He smiled in response, gesturing to himself and asking, "So tell me, who is the king? Is it me or is it you?" She replied without hesitation, "Of course, it's you." He pressed on, asking then, "Will you follow my orders?" She nodded fervently. "Yes, of course I will." He smiled warmly and waved his hand at her. In that case, hold it well, my loyal knight. As Shirou departed, she held the caliborn in her hands, watching his retreating figure with a troubled expression on her face. Why must you constantly burden me with such difficult requests, my king? She murmured softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The night sky was breathtakingly beautiful with its dazzling display of stars. Beyond the city limits lay a vast expanse of suburban wilderness. Kay lay back, resting his hands behind his head and chewing on a piece of grass as he gazed up at the moon, which hung high in the sky like a shimmering silver plate. The stars twinkled like a sparkling sea, creating a stunning display. Shirou approached him slowly and asked, "What's on your mind, Kay?" Kay sat up and turned towards Shirou. "I'm thinking about us." Shirou sat down next to him, smiling. "I'm all ears. I'm trying to figure out Sir Ewain," Kay replied. "Sir Brastias has already acknowledged your right to succeed, so why not go straight to Camelot with Sir Ewain? The coronation ceremony takes 3 months, Shirou explained. Rather than wasting that time in Camelot, it would be more beneficial to travel across the country and raise awareness about Arthur. He knew that Shirou wouldn't make any decisions without good reason, so he tried to understand the rationale behind his friend's decision. However, after a moment's consideration, he shook his head and gave up, realizing he couldn't grasp the full extent of Shirou's plan. He didn't feel comfortable with strategies and tactics. He would rather be on the battlefield, fighting alongside his comrades against the enemy. Even though he could only defend himself against Artoria's attacks in that dream world, Kay still felt the rush of being on the battlefield, wielding his sword, and engaging in strategic battles. It was the thrill he craved and longed for. Kay posed a question to Shirou. How would you like me to address you? As Arthur or Guinevere?" Shirou chuckled. "You talk too much. Like an older brother standing up for his unfairly treated little sister. You can call me either Guinevere or Arthur, whichever." Kay gazed at Shirou for a long moment before finally asking, "Do you truly intend to return the throne to Artoria?" He turned to Kay, wearing a peculiar expression, and replied, "Why do you think I would covet this throne?" "That's because so many people aspired to become king. The northern kings and the former King Uther were once just lords of Britain. But when the Roman Empire..." He understood Kay's concern and asked, "Are you worried that once I ascend to the throne, I will become greedy and refuse to relinquish it?" Kay nodded and replied honestly, "I won't be hypocritical with you, so I'll tell you the truth. Yes, I am worried about that." Shirou reassured Kay with a smile. "There's no need to worry about." Kay looked at Shirou's sincere attitude and couldn't help but ask, "Why?" "Being a king would be too exhausting, and the enjoyment it brings in this world isn't comparable to living a normal life in my own world. To be honest, my ultimate goal is to return home, buy a few houses, marry a good woman. Oh wait, it's not enough. In addition to that, I also want to become a wealthy man. This is the one." Kay couldn't help but point out the apparent contradiction and said, "Wait a minute, you just said you weren't interested in ruling the world, and now you want to be wealthy. Isn't that contradictory?" Shirou responded eagerly. "Not at all. When you've experienced being a slave to your house, car, credit card, and various financial obligations, you'll understand why I'm so driven by the desire for wealth. Yes, I admit it." I'm down saying, "Hold on, Guinevere. What you're saying, is it something specific to Avalon? I don't quite understand." Shirou's excitement dissipated as he apologized. "Avalon? Sorry. I remembered." Kay was curious and asked, "Memories? Is it something you've experienced before? Is that the source of your strength?" Shirou responded in a perplexed tone. "Why does everyone think I'm strong? I'm actually a very weak person." Kay was left speechless, wondering, does this guy have no self-awareness at all? Despite his humility, Shirou exhibited a remarkable level of composure and strength. He could face Sir Brastias directly and tolerate his questioning. He could accept the throne with equanimity and bear the weight of people's expectations with a smile. Kay couldn't help but be amazed by Shirou's humility despite his inner strength. If it were him, he had no doubt that he would have become angry and would want to attack the knights with his sword just because of their protests. The contrast between Shirou's strength of character and Kay's own lack of composure was staggering. "What kind of experiences have you been through?" What experiences are you referring to?" "To be honest, the most hectic event in my life was being involved in a war." Kay's expression became intense as he heard Shirou mention the war. In a war, Kay's voice was serious. "Yes. But looking back now, it's actually a precious memory," Shirou reflected. "Maybe that's just how people are strong and fragile beyond their own understanding. There are times when a few words can make me burst into tears, but then there are times when I find myself gritting my teeth and enduring a long and arduous path in the moonlight. The weight of life, the chaos of war, the bitterness and pain hidden in words, and the struggles all seem to have transformed into beautiful memories and become a part of his journey in life." Kay was left speechless, feeling a tinge of shame in his heart. He had silently judged and doubted Shirou's character, but instead of becoming offended, Shirou had "If and when I find my way home, or if Artoria wishes to reclaim the throne, I will return it to her. But until then," standing up, bathed in the silvery moonlight, Shirou extended his hand to Kay and asked, "Would you like to become my knight?" Kay couldn't refuse such a request. He rose to his feet and kneeled down on one knee, his face solemn as he made his oath. I pledge myself as your knight, whether you take the guise of King Arthur or Guinevere until the end of days. The two of them made their way back along the starry path, walking under the twinkling stars and the glowing moon. The next day, Shirou's group was sent off to the entrance. Hector apologized. I'm sorry, I would have loved to accompany you, but my body isn't what it used to be. I can only send you here. Shirou reassured him. It's okay, Sir Hector. Actually, I'm very grateful to you. If it wasn't for you appearing and saving my life a year ago, I might have died under the cavalry's assault. Hector's emotions were stirred. Who would have thought that? His gaze shifted towards Kay, who was carrying a large bundle. Kay, since you have sworn allegiance to King Arthur, you must obey the king's orders during the journey, and also take care of your sister. Kay nodded. Artoria frowned discontentedly and objected. Hector, I am not a weak woman, but the king has stated that you are now. This response made her sulky. She was not accustomed to being. Shirou's group departed amidst the cheers of the people. Merlin, where is our first stop? Shirou asked, turning towards him. It's Garad, replied Merlin. Shirou nodded, acknowledging that he was not familiar with the town distribution of ancient Britain. However, he trusted that Merlin and Kay were knowledgeable about the area. Today, the island of Britain is divided into two parts, with the city of Londinium occupied by the usurper Vortigern in the center, serving as the boundary between the two parts. In the north, Vortigern, the Saxons, and the Picts from Ireland have occupied Scotland and the northern part of England. In the south, the Britons and the powerful kings Nance and Lot led the northern kings of Britain in forming a defense line along the Welsh coast that connected Cornwall, Northumberland, Nottingham, and Windsor. This line effectively blocked Vortigern, the Saxons, and the Picts from entering. He simply had to pass through the Camelot's territory on his way, which allowed more people to get to know him and understand the basic situation of Camelot before he reached the capital. He took the lead with Merlin at his side, while Artoria caught up to Kay, who was burdened with carrying all the luggage on his back. Brother, please let me help carry some of the luggage and share the burden with you. Quick, she frowned, her displeasure evident. Brother, before she could finish her sentence, the sound of galloping hooves reverberated through the thick fog, approaching from behind. She acted quickly to shield Shirou, her expression alert. However, Shirou calmly pulled her behind him and turned to face the source of the disturbance. He recognized the knights as the same ones who had previously surrounded the estate and questioned him. While they had once been skeptical of Shirou, they now showed him great respect, as he had managed to win them over. Although they had not pledged their allegiance to him like Artoria and Kay, the knights were willing to support Shirou as long as it did not compromise their honor and The knights looked bewildered and asked, Your Highness, are you still holding us accountable for our previous doubts? Shirou shook his head and replied, No, it's not. However, traveling with a large group through villages and towns could potentially cause unrest and anxiety among the people. I deeply appreciate your loyalty and devotion to me, but for now, I must ask you to depart and wait for me in Camelot, where the king and knights will achieve everlasting glory, Your Highness. We will wait for you in Camelot. The knights were touched by his words and Shirou and his companions rode through the night towards Garad, the nearest town. Artoria looked at Kay and asked, Did you call me a pig again, brother? Stop chattering and catch up. I'm already carrying too much baggage, Kay retorted. How can that be? I'm a knight of the king too. I can't let you carry all the luggage by yourself, she protested. Artoria Shirou turned his. She quickly touched the sword in her arms and replied with utmost seriousness, You can count on me, my king. From then on, she didn't bring up the idea of sharing the luggage again. Whether it's before or after becoming a king, why does Artoria listen to you so obediently? Kay gazed at Shirou's back with a mix of annoyance and frustration. Despite spending 10 years together every day in contrast, Shirou could change everything with just one sentence. Kay couldn't help but wonder if this was the difference between him and Shirou. No wonder Shirou was the king he served now. In the end, Kay could only think in this way. The night sky was pitch black, with the crescent moon hanging alone in the air, casting a faint and chilly moonlight upon the land. Within a dark forest, Shirou leaned against a tree trunk while examining a map of the kingdom provided by Merlin, while Kay retrieved blankets from their luggage. Artoria sat beside the campfire, roasting some meat. Merlin, judging by our progress, we should be able to reach Garad by tomorrow noon, right? Shirou turned to Merlin and asked. Yes. It had been 3 days since they left the town, and the initial sense of excitement had faded away during the journey. Fortunately, they were traveling as a party, so he didn't feel lonely. My king, the meat is cooked. Please try it. Artoria offered a large piece of roasted meat to him. Shirou put down the map and looked at the piece of grilled meat in front of him, which was slightly burnt and even amid. Just as he was about to take a bite, he noticed Artoria staring at him eagerly. So, he put down the meat and said helplessly, Artoria, why don't you eat too? She responded eagerly, But how can I eat before you? As your knight, it is my duty to wait until you have eaten. What if you haven't had enough? He let out a chuckle and said, Don't worry, I don't have as big an appetite as you do, so just eat. Kay teased. Don't worry, no one can match your appetite, because you're a pig, brother. I feel offended when you describe me like that, Artoria said in an angry tone. She then turned her head away, feeling embarrassed, and added, "And I'm already controlling my portion size, okay?" Shirou chuckled and said, "I told you not to worry about that. How can I do that? Even though I'm only a trainee knight, I will never let my king go hungry. So, you guys go ahead and eat. I'll take care of the rest." Artoria's tone remained firm, but her gaze shifted towards the roasted meat in the hands of the three. Shirou smiled and told Kay to go ahead and eat first. Once they had finished, Artoria began to eat and devoured all the remaining roasted meat. Later, "I'm so hungry." She held her stomach, looking uncomfortable. Artoria knew that as a knight, it would be a great shame to let her king go hungry. She was aware of her own appetite and had been consciously controlling it since the day in town. However, despite her efforts, she couldn't help but feel famished. "I'm so hungry, so hungry." She held her stomach, tossing and turning in makeshift bed. She opened her eyes and saw Shirou squatting beside her, smiling at her warmly. "Your Majesty, my king." She sat up quickly and asked in a worried tone, "Did I wake you up? If so, please forgive me, double quotes." "No," he replied. "Would you like to join me for a hunt?" Artoria's eyes lit up, and her hair on her forehead fluttered as she responded earnestly, "Absolutely, let's go." Shirou led Artoria away, and Kay, who was only half awake, contemplated for a moment before closing his eyes and settling back down. Meanwhile, Merlin leaned against the trunk of a tree, holding his staff and snoring loudly. However, it was more accurate to say that Artoria was leading the way, rather than Shirou. He didn't possess any special hunting skills, and his evil flower was only capable of detecting and absorbing human evil, rendering it useless against non-human beasts. Artoria, on the other hand, possessed superior hunting skills, particularly when she was hungry. She could almost Eventually, she detected a boar that was out foraging. Snort, snort. A towering boar, standing at 3 meters tall and as massive as a tank, locked eyes with Shirou and Artoria with a ferocious gaze. It was evident that the boar saw the two of them as its prey. Thud, thud. The boar charged towards Artoria, its razor-sharp teeth glinting like blades in the silvery moonlight. Artoria kept her gaze fixed on the charging boar, her piercing blue eyes flashing with greed. In a swift motion, she reached out her slender hand, clad in a white glove, and seized the boar's razor-sharp teeth with a grip resembling that of a dragon's claw. With a display of immense strength, rumble, rumble. With a calm and composed gaze, she then used her other hand to plunge into the boar's abdomen, seizing hold of its heart, before crushing it with a single squeeze, producing a distinct crack sound. Splash, 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 . The boar's blood gushed out like a fountain, drenching her white armor in a crimson hue, rendering her. The beast groaned a few times before finally succumbing to its wounds and passing away. She stood up, wiping the blood from her face, before turning to look at Shirou. "My king, it's been taken care of," she said calmly. As Shirou gazed upon Artoria, who was now coated in blood, he couldn't help but break out into a cold sweat. He forced a dry smile and muttered, "That was," shaking his head to clear his thoughts. Shirou continued, "Let's drag the boar to the river and wash it off first." "Understood." Artoria nodded in agreement. She then reached for the boar's teeth and began to drag the warm, lifeless corpse of the animal behind him. Shirou led Artoria to a small stream nestled in the forest, and Artoria leaned over the riverbank and scooped up handfuls of water to cleanse the blood from her face. Afterwards, she removed her silver-white armor, leaving only her white evening gown. She then proceeded to use the river water to rinse away the bloodstains from her armor. Once she finished rinsing her armor, Artoria set it aside and removed her black stockings, dipping her delicate white legs into the cool water. As the pale, chilly moonlight illuminated her surroundings, casting a shimmering silver veil over the lake's surface, Artoria noticed the fireflies flitting about in the grass along the riverbank. They appeared like tiny stars, dancing and twinkling amidst the darkness, their beauty both breathtaking and captivating. Even Artoria, who usually lacked any romantic inclination. "Artoria, Artoria," Shirou called out as he approached her, holding something in his hands and sporting a smile on his face. "Can you guess what I have here? Is it food?" she inquired. Shirou shook his head. "No, it's not food." He opened his hands, and a cluster of fireflies began to emerge, resembling tiny twinkling stars hovering in front of her. "What do you think? Aren't they beautiful?" She responded with a troubled, "Yes, I may be a woman, but above all, I am a knight." He grinned at her response. "It's precisely because you are a knight that I wish to share this with you." She gazed at Shirou, her expression one of confusion and bewilderment. "Don't limit yourself to serving and protecting others," he suggested. "Take a moment to appreciate the beauty of what you've sworn to protect." She pulled out a notebook from her. "What are you writing down exactly?" "I'm recording this experience because I want to learn from it." Shirou chuckled and settled down beside her, his gaze fixed on Artoria's slender legs as they dangled in the water. "Why did you go through all that trouble to clean the bloodstains instead of using Caliborn, my king?" she responded. a troubled expression on her face. The king's sword may be a symbol of power and authority, but it is still a sword at its core, meant to be wielded. He gestured towards Caliborn in her possession, and added with a grin, if it remains sheathed all the time, it'll cry. She seemed troubled by his words, but Caliborn is the sword of the king. As your knight, it would be inappropriate for me. Then as your king, I hereby grant you permission to wield the sword during my time as the king of Camelot. You are my loyal knight, and I trust you with the responsibility of protecting me with the sword. Artoria's expression shifted, and she responded earnestly, as your knight, my loyalty to you goes without question. I have already pledged my unwavering fealty to you and have entrusted my sword to your care. Next time, you must use the sword. Otherwise, I won't feel safe. Although she appeared hesitant at first, she eventually nodded in agreement. I understand, my king. If that is your wish, then I shall use the sword, as you permit. With the cleaning complete, she proceeded to wash her stockings once again, to avoid disturbing the rest of their companions. Artoria's armor and stockings were still drenched from the earlier washing, and thus were left out to dry by the fire. Meanwhile, she donned her lily-like dress and appeared somewhat troubled as she used Caliburn to carve up the boar and gather branches to prepare for roasting it over the fire. Hold on a moment, Shirou interjected, taking the roasted meat from her grasp with both hands. He then proceeded to flip. Doing so will result in some parts being undercooked, while others will be overcooked and burnt. You need to distribute the flames evenly, like this. Under Shirou's guidance, the meat in his hand sizzled as it cooked to perfection. Golden hot oil droplets slowly trickled down the surface of the tender meat and fell into the fire. A mouth-watering aroma of richly roasted meat wafted through the air, causing Artoria's eyes to light up and her mouth to water. However, she wasn't solely focused on the roasted meat before her. Instead, she turned her head to gaze at Shirou's profile, seemingly lost in thought. Shirou touched his face. What's the matter? Do I have something on my face? She lowered her head slightly and spoke in a tone of shame. Even something as simple as cooking food is beyond me, and I find myself relying on you to teach me. There's no need to feel ashamed, he reassured her with a warm smile. No one is born knowing everything. If there is something you don't know, just learn it. Even I had to learn from someone else at some point. She gazed at Shirou's face, taking in his comforting words, and then nodded resolutely. After enjoying a hot, the two of them then proceeded to extinguish the campfire and return to their original resting spot. Sensing their return, Kay secretly opened his eyes and stole a glance at Shirou and Artoria. Upon seeing that they had already dozed off, he relaxed and repositioned himself to sleep more comfortably. Merlin, who had been snoring loudly, silently opened one eye and cast